This conference will now be recorded.
So I would like to get a little background about yourself. We will have a quick introduction just to understand your background, and then why exactly you're planning to go through this HL7 training, and what are the opportunities that you are looking at. So we will start with Josh.
Yeah. So good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Yeah, I am from the Philippines, and as background for me, I am a full stack programmer,
Mm-hmm.
mainly using PHP. And last year, I transferred to another job, and they are using Mirth Connect as platform. So since that time, I studied the user manual,
Mm-hmm.
user guide
Mm-hmm.
3.8. And then I still wanted to have a formal training, so I'm happy that I found this training. So,
Okay.
thank you. Yeah.
Great. Great. That's good to hear. Sure,
Yeah.
sure, Josh. Next we'll go to Sherry.
Hi, my name is Cherie Lawrence, and I am actually wanting to learn more about HL7 because I work on a system called Epic.
Mm-hmm.
It's an electronic medical record system, and I'm interested in bridges and reading HL7 messages. I think it'll be great for my personal growth and development. So I decided to take this class just to, get the basics of HL7 down.
Great, absolutely great. So you're certified in which module of Epic?
I am certified in ambulatory and professional billing.
Great, great. That's good to hear. So looking forward for bridges.
Yes, yes.
Great, great. That's good to hear. All right. So myself, I have been in healthcare IT industry for the past 11 years. So I have been working in various integration teams, which include HL7 implementations, X12, which are for insurance implementation, and then CCD, as well as recently I've been involved in few projects which include FHIR. So I'm working on various these all of these types of integrations, and I have worked on various integration engines like Rhapsody, Connector, Allscripts Interface Engine, and then um, Ensemble, which is Health Shares Interface Engine, and also Mirth Connect. I'm getting little now. I'm trying to learn Cloverleaf as well, just to get a good understanding of it. More or less, all the interface engines are same. Just the GUI and the functionality is little different from each other. So, and um, I've been in training industry for the past 7 years, and specifically online trainings. I've been training resources from the past 3 years. Earlier, I used to take classroom trainings, but I have stopped it because of the heavy traffic at the place where I am. I should travel 2 hours to go to the institute and train people, which is taking away or eating away most of my time. Then I shifted back to the online trainings methodology. So having great time here, reaching out to new people, and getting to know new people and training them. That is all from my end. We have Mukund who just joined. So Mukund, a quick introduction about yourself and what is it that you're exactly expecting from this training, and where did you hear about HL7 and all?
Yeah, so I have around 19 years experience, and
Mm-hmm.
I've been working mainly in the healthcare industry. So I was in Philips for almost like eight years, and in Allscripts for around 3.5 years. So I have been working mainly on the RIS part, and in Allscripts it was mainly on the HIS part. So this
Mm-hmm.
is more of to get to know more in depth this one on the HL7. So I kind of know the basics, and I was searching for someone who could kind of guide me on the advanced concepts. So I got your details from this one where I was googling, and
Hmm.
I heard some of the demos, and it was like good. So I thought I would want to take up more advanced course. So that's the reason I have joined.
Okay, that's great. That's great, Mukund. So, with all scripts, you were at which location? In
It's
India?
Bangalore. Yeah, it's Bangalore, Bangalore
Okay.
location.
Okay. Oh, great. That's great to hear. So, which team you were part of?
I was in the professional EHR. This is the ambulatory EHR team.
Oh, okay. I mean, professional EHR implementations, interface implementations, or uh, which part of the team? Because I
So it
worked for
was
Allscripts for past for 6 years almost.
okay, okay. So I was handling the delivery part. So it
Okay.
was more of so I was the QA manager there.
Oh, great. That's great to hear. That's great to hear. So I worked extensively on professional EHR interface implementations, Pro PM,
Oh, okay.
Enterprise
Uh-huh.
PM,
Okay.
and Connector, Allscripts interface engine, Rhapsody, and all of these things there.
Okay. Okay. Uh-huh.
So, anyways, that's great to hear. Nice to meet you people. So we will start today's session. This session will be mainly concentrating on the first part that I usually go through, which is hospital workflow. Why do we need HL7? Where exactly we come across these terms? What is the significance? Why do we have this HL7 as standard of medium and all of these aspects? So let me share my screen and start the presentation. All right, to summarize about the entire training, we will be having this training in three parts. First, one third part will be will be completely on HL7, where we'll be covering in depth about all the different message types that we encounter in the real-time world, which we frequently use in the interface implementations in the entire hospital life cycle, which will include about ADT messages, SIU, which are for appointments, and then charge related messages, orders and results related messages, and all of these things. And we'll be getting in depth about each message type, what are the segments involved, and what are the fields involved, what are the important fields in each of those segments. So that will be our first part. Intermediary part, where we'll be covering few things about networking, understanding a little bit about JavaScripting and E4X, which is crucial to go ahead and learn Mirth. So those things will act kind of basics to understand the architecture of Mirth and how we can facilitate or implement interfaces on Mirth Connect. And the last part would be mainly on completely on Mirth, where we'll be going through the entire application tour, looking at each and every option that is there while creating a new interface or a channel on Mirth Connect in depth. And once we complete taking the application tour, we'll be creating few channels and which we usually encounter in the real-time world. And we'll have some practical sessions on how you can create channels. I'll be giving some assignments where you need to complete those assignments and send them back to me. I'll review them and I'll let you know in case if there are any corrections and all. In the last session, we'll be going through about other standards in healthcare industry like CCD and FHIR, a quick bird's eye view and introduction on what is CCD, what is HIE, where do we use CCDs, and also how we can learn CCD standard, and also about FHIR. What is FHIR? Why do we use FHIR? And what are the standards that we have as per HL7 organization for FHIR. So these are the basic aspects that we'll be going through, and the entire course is designed this way. So in today's session, we'll be taking through the first first session where we'll be going through basics of hospital workflow. By the end of this session, uh, we'll get a clear picture on where do we hear this term HL7, and we'll be quickly going through hospital workflow. And then we'll also be taking a look at what is HL7, why the name has come, and how the why HL7 is used and how the name has come. What is an interface? What is the role of HL7 specifically in interfaces? How interoperability has been established with the help of HL7, and we will also be taking a look at the HL7 structure. So we'll be going through all of those things. I think we have Litson who joined just now. Hey Litson, thank you for joining. My name is Dixon, and I'll be the trainer for this session. I just could you just give a quick introduction about yourself, just your background, and what is uh, what is your expectation out of this HL7 training?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm Lixon, and I'm working as a programmer over in
Mm-hmm.
US,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm in a hospital setting. So I would like to know more about HL7 interface, and we are currently having an HL7 interface engineer at my hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I thought of, okay, let's explore some of the things about this and make use of some of the functionalities.
Okay, great, great. All right, thank you for joining. So we just
Thank you.
started. Um, so I was just going through the introduction. You can go through the recording for the introduction part later. That was just 2-minute introduction about the course itself. So we are getting into the actual content now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So we'll jump to the next slide. So before getting into the session, I would like to go through the general terms that we would be using down the line. So a PM is a practice management system which will be which will be used by the receptionist in order to uh, register demographics, which is nothing but patient details like name, date of birth, gender, insurances of the patient, and all of those things, and also to create appointments which can be sent over to EHR. EHR is an electronic health record, which is a clinical application which is used by doctors to enter the entire clinical information of the patient. And then hospital information system, the entire electronic ecosystem of the hospital where PM and EHR are, and if there is an internal lab, if all of those are interconnected with each other, that is called as hospital information system. And if lab is outside the hospital, usually labs and hospitals are integrated or an interface is developed between them. So the lab system separately is called as lab information system. ICD-9 is International Classification of Diseases. This is nothing but a library with list of all the diseases present in the world. Each of these diseases will have a specific code, unique code, using which we can identify every disease. So we usually use ICD-9s, ICD-10 right now. We are running with ICD-10 version 10 right now, and this we usually come across about this during the charge-related implementations. And then we have CPT code, which is current procedural terminology. Basically, after identifying an issue or problem with a patient, doctors will doctors will perform some procedures on the patient. So those procedures are indicated with the help of CPT codes. Again, this is also a library with list of all the procedures that are available. And then CCD is a continuity of care document, which is a general PDF kind of document where entire patient history is sent to a different system altogether called as Health Information Exchange. We will be looking more at Health Information Exchange in the last two sessions, as I said earlier. But Health Information Exchange is kind of a central repository uh, where all the hospitals will be sharing the data with Health Information Exchange. And that exchange usually happens with the help of CCD. So CCD is, again, as I said, it is a document using which data related to a patient will be shared, which includes everything like allergies, vitals of the patient, medications, history of immunizations, and what is the chief complaint for any specific visit, what is a discharge summary if he is an inpatient, and all of these things. So CCD includes all of those aspects. IHE is Integrating Health Enterprise. This is a standard which we use to implement an interface between hospital and health information exchange. So we'll be taking a look at that as well, a quick introduction or just a little information on that during the last two sessions. Next, we'll get into hospital workflow. The reason that I cover this is at times few people are not from healthcare background, so I do take them through this the basic workflow. And most of the times during our entire training, we will be taking this as a blueprint and referring back to this hospital workflow because everything initiates from here, from hospital workflow perspective itself. Even when we are talking about different message types, we will be relating them back to the real-time scenarios where we will be talking about this hospital workflow again. So we'll quickly go through this. So as we know, when a patient arrives at a hospital, he will meet the receptionist, and a receptionist would ask the patient whether he is visiting for the first time or he has already been there. So if he is visiting for the first time, then the receptionist would capture the entire patient information and then save that within the system. This information, like patient first name, last name, and his personal details like email address, phone number, and insurances, all of these are together called as demographics in the healthcare industry. So we refer to them on a broader note as demographics. Then we have, once the demographics are captured by the receptionist, that demographic information will be sent back from the PM system to the HR system. So where exactly the receptionist is capturing this data, they are storing it in the PM system, which is the practice management system. Once the data is saved in there, that will be sent over to the provider into the EHR application that the provider is using. And after the demographics is captured, the next question to the patient would be they would ask the patient why they are here for and to meet which doctor they are here for. Then they will schedule the appointment accordingly based on the department and the doctor, and that appointment will also flow over to the clinician's desk so that doctor can get an idea or know that there is a patient who is visiting him for the next day or at that point of time. So once the patient meets the doctor, that situation is called as encounter, usually referred to the term encounter. So when the patient is meeting real time in doctor and discussing about his problem with the doctor. So an encounter, once the encounter starts, doctor will try to analyze what is the problem with the patient. In case if he's able to find out just by looking at the patient, then that's good. If not, they will go ahead and order or ask the patient to get further tests done, like blood test or urine test or x-ray test or anything, in fact. So they will go ahead and place an order, doctor will go ahead and place an order, and that order will be sent back will be sent to lab, and lab will perform the tests on the patient and will result back the results to the clinician's EHR desk. Once that is done, now doctor will go ahead and determine what is the problem the patient has and will sign off the chart by giving some procedures and providing some medications and all. So doctor's work is done. After that, once the doctor's work is done, the charges related to the visit and labs will be sent back to the receptionist desk to the PM system, so that the receptionist can go ahead and raise a claim and send it over to insurance in case if it is an insurance related patient, or else if he is a patient who is ready to go ahead and pay by hand, then they will go ahead and take the payment from the patient. So in this way, this is the entire workflow, which will conclude the cycle of patient arriving at the hospital and patient finally paying the bill and leaving the hospital. So all of these message transactions that we are seeing here one by one, which is sending demographics from PM to EHR, and then from EHR to lab, sending lab tests and getting the results back. All of these are happening electronically. Usually, in traditional mode, if an hospital is not electronic, all of these happen through paperwork, right? But in the US, where the HL7 is extensively used, and other countries are acquiring it now, uh, this entire flow happens electronically between the systems. At times, you might see that PM and EHR systems are not two different systems altogether. It might be an integrated console like Epic and Cerner, where PM and EHR is a single module which is present within the same system. So now we will take a look at why do we need HL7. Before that, I'll give you a small illustration. Let us say we have three different people from three different countries. Let's say we have one person from US, one person from India, and another from China. So these three people are trying to communicate with each other. However, each of them does know the other person's language. US guy doesn't know Indian language, which is Hindi, and Chinese guy doesn't know English language, which is the US's language. But if they want to communicate with each other, let's say for example, if the Chinese guy want to communicate with Indian guy, he has to learn the regional Indian language. And at the same time, if he has to communicate with the US guy, then he has to learn English language. So at this point of time, the Chinese guy is ending up in learning two different languages altogether. And if he has to communicate with more different people from different countries, he has to learn up more and more languages. In the same way, if the Indian guy has to communicate with US guy and Chinese guy, and if the US guy has to communicate with both of them, then he should also end up in learning two different languages. So in this example, we are seeing that each person is learning two different languages, which is time consuming, tedious, and will not know how it will execute and how much time it would take to execute for them to communicate with each other. So what they did is they said let's come up with a common language through which we can communicate with each other, and all of them can learn only one additional language, that additional standard language, so that um, we don't end up in learning multiple languages. So that is when they came up with English as the common language, and everyone started learning English. Now, once they started having English as the common medium of communication, each party involved within that communication chain had to learn only one additional language. In the earlier scenario, Chinese guy had to learn Indian regional language and US regional language. But after having a common medium of communication, Chinese guy had to learn only one language, that is English. Even the Indian guy, even the US guy already knows English, so that became the common medium of communication, and they were able to communicate with each other effectively. In the same way, HL7 also operates more or less in the very same way. So let's look at the example why it has come into existence. So in earlier when we had PM system, it is a software, right? Every software has a front end and a back end, the front end application and the back end database. So, and then we have EHR, and EHR has its own front end application and back end database. So when data is saved in the PM system, it is stored into the database. And when a patient detail is stored into the database, if that data has to be sent over to electronic health record, and if the doctor has to view that in the electronic health record application, this data has to be apparently sent to the electronic health record and should be stored in the database. So let's say patient gets registered in the PM system, it will be stored in the PM's database, and it has to go over from PM database to EHR database and then get stored in that database so that it can be seen in the EHR application. So this is usually done by an integration engineer. So what the integration engineer does is he will try to understand the database architecture of EHR and based on that he will extract the data. As he already has knowledge about PM data, he will extract the data from the PM database. He will send it to the HR database, and during this process he has to understand about the electronic health record database completely, which is a new thing altogether, and then go ahead and write the queries to insert the data into electronic health record. So this is if he is integrating with one system. Let us say he is integrating with more than one system, two, three, four, five. He has to end up in learning all the database architectures, which is again a time consuming and a tedious process. So that is when they have come up with an idea of having a common standard of communication so that the person, whoever is sending the data or whoever is receiving the data, can receive the data in that common format, and they don't need to understand, they don't even need to understand, they, in the sense, the integration engineer on the PM side, don't even need to understand the architecture of the other databases at all. So to avoid understanding of other databases and the time consumed there, and also and also to make the execution faster, they have come up with this idea of having a common language called as HL7. So what happens when HL7 comes into picture? The data will be extracted from the PM system and it will be converted to a common language, which is HL7. And once the message is in this format, everyone understands HL7 message because others are also learning it. And when others receive HL7 message, they know where to extract the data from within the HL7 message. They will pick the data from the HL7 message and insert that into the database. The integration engineer on the EHR side will do that work. So in this way, at the end of the day, each of these parties will only learn one additional thing, which is to understand HL7. And if they are understanding HL7, then they can import the data or extract the data and convert it into HL7 and send it over. So that is how a common standard medium of communication has come into picture in healthcare, which really advanced the time of interface implementations, uh, advanced the time of execution of interface implementations and all. So let us quickly take a look at what is an interface. An interface is nothing but a bridge, or you can say it is a tunnel, which is actually sending data from one system to another system. So in this scenario, now we understood that if we are using HL7, we don't essentially need to understand, I mean, essentially need to understand the architecture of other database. For example, in this slide, we are seeing that the PM system has SQL database and the HR system has flat file database. However, the integration engineer now has HL7 as common medium of communication, so they don't need to understand the architecture of other sites database at all. The the integration engineer on the PM side will extract data from PM and will send it in the form of HL7, and this will happen through an interface, which is a bridge, which is kind of a tunnel. And then electronic health record will receive that HL7 message and will import that data into the database. That work is done by the integration engineer on the EHR side, as he understands the HL7 and he also understands his own database architecture. So database to database direct connection uh, is not there after introducing HL7. They just generate HL7 messages and send them over to the other side, and it is the responsibility of the integration engineer on the other side to receive it and import it into their database. Now let us quickly take a look at so what is HL7? So it is nothing but a standard language, as we just said, standard messaging methodology, which is used to exchange data between different healthcare systems, whether it could be PM, AHR, or lab systems. It is also used for PACS. Uh, for PACS, we use a different system, DICOM messaging standard in concatenation with HL7 standards as well. And it is used by different countries. The name itself came from the OSI layers, which we'll be taking a look at in the next slide. But it is being used in more than 28 different countries in as of today, which includes India, Philippines, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, US, Canada, UK, Australia, and many other countries. So slowly, the healthcare world, wherever they are transferring from the paperwork to the electronic work, they are acquiring HL7 as a common standard medium of communication between healthcare systems. So why the name HL7 has come? For that, first we need to understand what is an OSI layer. So I'll give you a quick introduction about it, but there is a lot to understand OSI layers. I mean, this would be something extra that you would want to learn if in case if you have interest towards that. So OSI layers are nothing but these are the layers which will actually help or are used in order to transfer data from one place to another place. When I say that, whatever I am presenting on the screen is a soft data. You cannot touch it physically, right? Uh, for example, if you have a document that that is saved in our hard disk, we cannot touch it physically when we are seeing it on the screen. But how exactly the soft data that I am presenting here is showing up on your screen. So that is something which happens with the help of these OSI layers. So whatever I am presenting here is on the application side. I am presenting on the application layer. Underlying the application layer, there are 6 other layers which are converting the data and making them breaking down into packets and sending it through the physical wire from the internet port, the Ethernet port that we have. It will send the data, send the physical packets of data through that wire. And when you receive it on your end, there will be a reverse direction from changing the physical form to the soft form that you're seeing on your screen. Okay, so that is a little introduction about OSI model. So there is a lot happening between these 7 layers. In the application layer is what we are seeing on the screen. At the physical layer is what the actual hardware ports that we have through which the data is sent through the Ethernet port through the internet and which is reaching you. Why we are talking about this is when we are dealing with HL7, we are going to extract the data using an application. That is the first thing. We'll be using an application called as integration engine. Using that, we'll be extracting the data from the database or receiving the data, some other data from some other place like XML messages or HL7 messages directly. And we'll be converting that data into HL7 within that application and we will send it over to the destination. As HL7, as this functionality is mainly operating in the application layer, which is the 7th layer, we gave the name as HL7, which is health level 7. Okay, so that is the main reason. There is no other reason apart from that, as operation of this messaging standard happens at the 7th layer of OSI model. We call it as HL7. Okay, so a quick overview of what is HL7. Like any other language, it has its own grammar and syntax, which we'll be taking a look at. So version 2.3 is the most standard version that has been released and has been extensively used and been in the market for more than 10 years. So everything started to be standardized from version 2 itself. So it has more than 12 chapters and 5 appendices, and it has more than 50 data types. With latest version, which is 2.7 and 2.8, we have around 89 data types, out of which we'll be covering most of them, and we have 80 and 86 event types and message types as part of them. But we will be looking at most of the message types which are frequently used in the hospital workflow that we discussed to cover the entire cycle of patient right from the beginning of registration till the end when the patient is going to leave the hospital. So we'll be covering all the events which are included in this, and we'll be taking a look at different message types that we encounter during these scenarios. Hello? Hello
We can
guys, can
hear
you hear
you.
me? Okay,
Now we can hear you.
okay, yeah. So we had different versions. So later 2.2.1, 2.4, 2.5, and 2.7 and 8 are also released, which are being used. Even people are using 2.5 and 2.3 as of date as well. Version 3 was released in 2015 with a hope to change the complete messaging structure so that it can be extensively used in from XML perspective as well. However, it was not so welcoming by the industry because it did change the complete architecture of the messaging structure. So I would say it was a flop. It's been 5 years now. Version 3 has been released, but I don't see at least 2% of interfaces being used. Even still, for new implementations, people are sorting out for version 2 itself. No one is using 3. You can see one or two rare implementations here or there. Even those implementations were done in the first year. Like as soon as 3 was released, right, as soon as there is some new release, there will be a change in the industry. People will be trying to go after the new standards that has come in. So whoever has tried to do that at that point of time, they have moved from version 2 to version 3. But later, uh, as and when time went out, version 3 faded out, and not much people are using version 3 at all. So even today, version 2 is being used extensively in the market. Uh, and FHIR is not HL7 standard. It is a different standard released by HL7, uh, which is fast health interoperability resources. These are list of API resources which are used um, mainly for uh, mobile integrations and tab integrations and all. So we'll be taking a look at that at the end of this training. A quick introduction of what is a FHIR and where do we find resources and all. So this is the history of HL7.
Dixon, is there a document or this one which gives the differences between 2.3, 2. The various 2.x versions?
For every release of the version, you'll have an appendix which will clearly determine what is the difference between that version and its previous version. But no document specifically I have, or I did not find any which will determine everything in one document where it has differences between each versions. So for example, if you take a look at the documentation of 2.5, it will it will let you know what is the difference between 2.5 and its earlier version 2.4, but not 2.3. 2.4 will have the difference between 2.3 and 2.4. So that is how the documentations are rolled out. Anyway, in version 2.2.x, most changes are like addition of few fields or withdrawal of few fields which are already used, and it's more or less of the same kind. So when you're dealing with real-time implementations, 2.5, 7, and 3 are the mostly used as of now in the market. Um, However, specifically, there are only few fields which will deal with the real-time data where you might see these differences. All right. So what are the advantages of HL7? So it will help sharing of medical data with and demographic and billing data with HL7 enabled applications. Data transfer is in the form of standard messages, and there are no other tools, special tools required apart from one integration engine for creating messages, which is the quickest and easiest thing that we can do. And code is in the form of ASCII, which means if you understand the format of HL7, you will be able to read what is the data that is present within HL7. As it works on the application layer, it is independent of any OS. It can be done on Mac or Windows or Linux, Unix, Ubuntu, anywhere. It can be implemented on any of the OS systems. And then we have, then it can connect from any application to any application, obviously, as it is completely OS independent. If the applications can understand HL7, then yes, it can connect from any application to any application. And especially if integrations have to happen over the seas, then yes, it will definitely assist for that as well. And why do we need standards? Because we are dealing with the critical data, and if we have standards, everything becomes easy. Like under everyone can be on the same page of that particular standard and communicate the data. If there is no standard, then each one of them have to implement their own implementation plan of how to execute that data exchange, and it will give accessibility to larger subset of data, and it will definitely enable, as we will be communicating electronically, it will enable quicker insurance claims and enable interoperability, which is apps talking to each other. Apart from that, it is a greater safety for the patient because that will minimize the errors and the quality is utmost, which is the main agenda of having electronic transfer of uh, patient data. So let us quickly take a look at how HL7 messaging works and what is the trigger event. So when we were talking about hospital workflow, we did talk about the first scenario where the patient is visiting the receptionist and the receptionist capturing the entire patient data and storing that data within the system. Apparently, this thing that is happening there is considered as one event. And that event, as soon as that event completes or concludes, the patient data has to travel from PM system to the HR system, or else how the doctor will get to know what is the name of the patient and what is his age and all of these things, the basic things. They wouldn't know about it, right? So saving of that patient data within the PM system has generated the necessity of data flow from PM system to EHR system, right? So this event that is happening in the real-time world, where patient is getting his demographic details registered, is called as a trigger event, because that that event is generating or triggering the necessity of data flow from PM system to HR system. So that is called as a trigger event. In uh, I mean, the formal definition is the event in the real-time world will generate the necessity of data flow from one system to another system. So that event is called as a trigger event. Another example is doctor placing an order. So that is an event that happens in the real-time world. So uh, in this way, we have the entire hospital broken down into events, and each event will generate one type of HL7 message, which we'll be taking a look at in a while. So if we can broadly categorize into different actions that are happening in the real-time world, we have different groups of we can divide the entire hospital workflow into different groups and different events. So first we'll be taking a look at what are the different header groups that we usually come across, and then we will narrow down and get deeply into what are the events involved during these exchanges. So within a hospital, as I said, once the patient walks in, he gets himself registered, or if he is visiting For the second time, if there is any data update that has to happen, he will get his details updated. So this part is called as registration part. So this is called as a registration group. So anything that deals with the registration is categorized into one group. And then we have appointments. Once once the registration part is done, the second group or the second event is scheduling, getting an appointment scheduled, or canceling an appointment or updating an existing appointment. And then we have the third category is labs, where a doctor will send out the orders and results. And then the next category would be charges. Once the orders and results are done, the charge message will be sent back to the PM system. So this is the fourth group. And then we have, obviously, we have pharmacies and insurances, which is the next group, where pharmacies will receive prescription data once the patient leaves the doctor system, and insurances will receive claims from the PM system. We won't be looking at pharmacies and insurances because that doesn't deal with HL7 messaging methodology. They use a different standard called as X12 and e-prescriptions. So that is not covered in this training. So these are the four major events that we'll be taking a look at is registrations, appointments, labs, and charges, which we'll be covering in depth. And what are the different message types and event types that we get to know. Uh, so we'll be taking a look at them in detail in the next session. But just to give you an overview, these are the things that we'll be taking a look at. Next, let us quickly take a look at an anatomy of an HL7 message. To understand what is the HL7 message structure, we need to understand in detail of what it consists, how it consists, and all. So before that, I would like to give a quick example. Let us say that there are two people in a house, and there is a rack in the house, and there are three different shelves. Each shelf has different is dedicated for different type of I would say different type of first shelf is dedicated for clothing, second shelf is dedicated for books, third shelf is dedicated for something else. Let us say that. So each of these shelves have labels like clothes, books, and books, and each shelf is divided into compartments. Okay. First compartment has t-shirts, second compartment has trousers, third one has shirts. Now let us say there are two people in this house. When where one of them is leaving the house, he leaves the house, and after half an hour he calls back the guy and tells him, can you get me the t-shirt? Then the second guy gets there, goes to the first rack, goes to the rack and gets to the first shelf, and then he will pick up a t-shirt and he will go out and give it to the other guy who is outside. Now when the first guy is communicating with the second guy, he did not tell him where to go, where to pick up the t-shirt from, but still the second guy was able to go ahead and get the t-shirt and give it to him. How is that happening? Because both of them are aware of the architecture, or both of them are aware that um, there is a shelf, and within the shelf, the first shelf indicates first shelf has clothes, and within the first shelf, the first compartment has t-shirts. The second guy knows about it, and that is a dedicated placeholder for the t-shirts as per their understanding, their each other's understanding. Okay, so they don't need to explicitly communicate with each other where it is present. In HL7 works pretty much very similar, in a very similar way. Let us say, let us take this as an HL7 message, and within HL7 message, first shelf is representing the patient detail, and within first compartment we have name of the patient, second compartment represents address of the patient, third compartment represents medical record number of the patient, and so on. Now, when these two people want to communicate with each other that where do we have patient name, they will just go to the first shelf, first compartment, because patient name is present there. HL7 works on the similar note. There are dedicated placeholders within a message where, sorry, where patient name is present at a dedicated place, address is present at a dedicated place, and date of birth is present at a dedicated place within a message. So we'll take a look at the framework of the message. You will understand what I'm talking about more. But the catch here is there are dedicated placeholders for each and every data element that we are dealing in the front end, like first name, last name, date of birth, gender, insurance company name, insurance group number, guarantor number. In this way, there are many data elements that we'll be dealing with in each and every message. Like if it is a registration message, we have many data elements. If it is an appointment message, again, we have many data elements. When I say data elements, it means data pieces. Last name, name is a data piece, email address is a data piece, and phone number is a data piece. Each of these data elements have dedicated placeholders in HL7. So let us look at now the anatomy of the message. So each message, each HL7 message has a segment, and each segment is again divided into fields. Each field is again divided into components, and components are again divided into subcomponents. So it is like a tree. Okay, each one of them are subset of the other one. Messages have segments, segments have fields, fields will again in turn have components, components will again in turn have subcomponents. For now, please just understand till components. Subcomponents we can understand it later. So as I said, each shelf represents a segment, and within each segment we had compartments, right? So each compartment is called as a field, and in each field we store one type of data element. For example, field number 1 will have patient name, field number 2 will have patient address, field number 3 will have patient phone number, and so on. Okay, so each message is divided into segment. Each segment will have its own label, its own name, and each segment is again divided into fields. Each field is again divided into components. There might be one component, there might be no component, or there might be more than two components, one or two components. It depends on the nature of the data that is stored in one specific field. So we'll take an example to understand that more. So each component is again divided into subcomponents. So now let us understand the grammar of HL7 message. So same like our English language, we have punctuations, right? Like comma, full stop, spaces, and quotations, and so on. In a very similar way, HL7 has its own grammar and syntax, which we need to understand so that we can, if you don't understand that full stop is an end of the sentence, we might not read the paragraph properly. In the same way, if you don't understand these punctuations of HL7, we won't be able to read HL7 messages. So let us take a look at that and understand what are the punctuations we have. So these are not called punctuations, obviously. They are called as message delimiters. So the first one is segment terminator. As the name itself indicates, it will let us know that a segment has concluded, or it's like a full stop in the English language. So it will be, by looking at the segment terminator, we understand that that is the end of the segment, and next segment is going to start. Then we have field separator, which is like space between two words. Each word is separated by a space, right, in a sentence. In the same way, each data element that we are dealing with is separated with the help of a pipe. So if we are looking at some data between two pipes, it means that we are looking at a specific data element. And then we have component separator, which is indicated with the help of a caret. So if there are two components, more than one component within a field, inside two pipes within a field, then they are separated with the help of a component separator. And if the components are again divided into subcomponents, then we have ampersand as a symbol, and ampersand will help them to divide two components. Repetition separator and escape character are two different things, which we'll be taking a look at with an example when we are talking about an ADT message, because talking about that here might not make a lot of sense and understanding at this point of time, as we are just getting introduced to HL7. Next, we will take a look at one sample HL7 message just to understand how it looks like. So as I said, HL7 message first point comprises of segments. So as we are seeing here, this is a message segment, this is EVN, this is PID, NK1 and PV1. Each segment has its own label and it tells us what kind of data that particular segment has. For example, MSH represents message segment header, which we'll be taking an in-depth look at in the upcoming sessions. But just for our understanding now, it includes the header related information of who is receiving message, from where the message is coming, at what time the message got generated, what is this message all about, and all of these things. In the same way, if you look at PID segment, this PID segment has details of patient identification, and this PV1 has information about patient visit. So each segment has its own name, and first three letters of that segment will let us know what kind of data is present within that segment. And next is to understand how each segment is has different fields. Now, if you look at this, once PID is concluded, we have a pipe, and there is another pipe here. There is a blank value here. So this is the first field, same like the compartment that we were discussing in the example. So this is the first field, which is blank here right now. And after that, we have second field. So when we look at a sentence in an English language, we have first word and then a space and then second word and then a space and then a third word. So very similarly, we have PID as the name and then we have first field separated with the help of a pipe, and whatever is there after the first field is the second field, and then third field, fourth field is blank here again, and then fifth field. In this way, we have the entire segment divided into fields with the help of these pipes. And at the end of the segment, we'll have a carriage return, which you won't be able to see in the normal message. You need to paste that in the Notepad++ to see the carriage return, which we'll be seeing down the line. But the point I want you to understand here is each segment is divided into fields and they are divided with the help of a pipe. And when you read it HL7 messages, you read it as this is field number 1, this is field number 2, this is field number 3. Same like the compartment example that we are taking a look at. Compartment number 1, number 2, number 3, and so on, right? In the same way, these fields are numbered as number 1, number 2, number 3, 4, and 5. So when I read an HL7 message, when I communicate to someone about HL7 message, I say that PID 5 has patient. It means that I am going to take a look at PID segment and I'll be counting the fields. This is field number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. See, and in 5 we have patient name. Test John is the patient name. And this is a test sample because we cannot use any live sample message. So I'm using a test message here. So this is PID 5 is the test name of a patient. Okay. Similarly, this is 6 and this is 7. PID 7 is date of birth of a patient. So we'll be reading on with the help of field numbers to identify a data element within HL7 message. And whenever we want to communicate, we communicate with in the very similar manner as PID 10, PID 13, or if you're talking about some other field like PV1, we'll say PV1 3, PV1 2, and so on. Okay, so that is how we'll be navigating through the message of HL7. So we have specific tools reading, like, I mean, whenever I say PID 5, you might want to count PID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it becomes hectic and difficult. So we have certain tools which will break down the message for us. We'll be taking a look at those tools in tomorrow's session. so that you can use them. They are freewares. You can download them and take a look at each field of HL7 message. Okay, sorry about that. So, and each field is again divided into components, as I said. Let us understand what that means. So in PID segment, it includes patient identification, and name is one of the main factor for identifying a patient, right? So PID 5 indicates name. So PID 5 here has test John. Now, when we talk about name as a whole, we know that each name will have first name and last name, right? It might have suffix like junior, senior, or prefix like doctor or something else. So these are additional components of the name. Name as a whole is name. However, when you break down the name, you will have other components of the name, like first name, last name, and so on. So these components are again divided with the help of a caret. As I said in the previous slide, we are looking at the delimiters, right? Each component is again divided, each field can be again divided into components. So this is an example of how fields can be divided into components. Field is nothing but a name. However, the components of that name are last name and first name, separated with the help of a caret symbol. If we don't have this, we might have to write the entire thing, test John, without any spaces or without anything, and that wouldn't make any sense. So to make that difference, they have had this caret as component separator within fields. So you will see this caret within fields only, not between segments, not between fields. If you have a caret symbol, it means that it is within one field and it is separating two components. Okay, so any questions, guys, so far?
It's fine.
All right.
Go ahead, actually.
Yeah. All right. So I hope you guys got the understanding of this session and the structure of HL7 messages. So we'll be continuing this session from tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll have a second session where we'll be taking a look at what are the different message types for each of the events that we did take a look at, like registration, appointments, charges, labs, and all. And what are the names that are given in terms of HL7 for each of these individual events that are happening, and what are the different events involved within those message types also. We'll be taking a look at each one of them, and we'll start with ADT A04 message, which is a registration message, and what are the segments and fields involved in these messages. We'll be going through them in tomorrow's session. So we'll conclude today's session here, and thank you everyone for joining. Hope to see you tomorrow at the same time. You all have a good
Thank
day.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Dixon. This is Sudhakar.
Hey, Sudhakar.
So I just have a quick question. So,
Sure.
is there a number I can call you, or can we chat here? Are we the only two people? I think there are other people too.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk personally, you can. I'm pinging my number. Anyone who wants to ping
Yeah.
me or call me, they can call me on this number.
Okay,
So
sure.
if it is
Thank
from
you.
US, then they have to call using this number. Yeah. Sorry.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Hello, Dixon. Hello.
Hey, listen, yeah, tell me.
Yeah. Is tomorrow is also we have the demo or it's like a paid? How is that going? Because I have not paid for this classes.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, you can join tomorrow as well, and you can make a decision if you would like to proceed forward or not. And
Okay.
in order to join from day after tomorrow, you have to pay. I think you can talk to Srinivas about it, who is the actual organizer who from you received the
Okay.
email. So he'll
Okay.
be in
So,
touch with you mostly.
okay. So he will be contacting me through email, right?
Yeah, through email, or you can reply back to his email and give your contact details, and he will get in touch with you.
Okay. And just for this session, like we have a hands-on training, like we can log into some VPN to some server and do it, or
You can during this training, I'll be letting you know how to install Mirth Connect on your system, and using Mirth Connect, I'll be providing sample databases, demo EHR database using which you'll be extracting the data from database using that Mirth Connect, and you'll be having hands-on experience with the real-time
okay.
scenarios.
So this is a daily session for the whole
Yes,
how many weeks
yes.
it will be there?
It will be for 4 weeks. We'll have 25 to 28 sessions based on the assignment speed and everything that you are going to deal with.
Okay.
So if everyone is completing the assignments, we'll be completing it soon. So it
Okay.
depends. It keeps, and I mean the pace keeps changing from 25 to 28, 29 days based on the
Oh,
questions, because I usually take up the questions during the sessions itself so that rest of them can also get some understanding of what others' perspective is. That will be helpful for the other team members as well.
okay. Alrighty. Thank you.
You're welcome.